Hi, everybody. You're listening to Let's Talk ETC. I'm your host, Carlo V, along with my co-host, Dr. Christian Severino. We've got a really special guest with us here today, but I'd still like to go over a couple of recent events that have happened in the ETC community. We're really excited about the release of the Mantis client for ETC from IOHK's Mantis team. It's still in beta right now. It's a testnet beta-only version, but we're really encouraging anyone out there in the community to test out the client as much as they can. Leave us some bug reporting. I put up a daily bug reporting thread on the Reddit, as well as there's a Mantis bug reporting channel on Slack. So any issues you guys are experiencing with the testnet release or the beta release of this Mantis client, let us know. We've got some really cool things planned after we iron out all the details with Mantis and hooking it into a bunch of other things that I won't get into any specifics, but there's some really cool stuff in the pipeline for Mantis. So anybody out there who wants to try out the client and let us know what's going on, we'd love to hear your input. I'm looking to possibly next week have on the Mantis team to talk about everything that they've achieved the last 6 months. They've been at it a while creating this client. So we'd love to have the whole Mantis team on for a little bit of a congratulations now that there haven't been any major bugs reported. The team lead has been taking a little break since he's been doing so much work nonstop on the client for such a long time. So when he's back, or possibly even before he's back, we're going to have a bunch of the team members on here for community questions and to just hear about their experiences building out the client. But to get back onto the real exciting part about today's show, we have an excellent guest with us today, Viktor. Thanks for joining us. We're really happy to have you on here.
Hello, guys. It's nice to be on the show.
So it's Viktor Tron.
Yeah.
Tron's your last name?
Yes, correct.
All right.
Well, names don't get much cooler than that, by the way. Viktor Tron. But so Viktor, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to a couple of our shows, but something we really like to do is have the community get a more down-to-earth feel for the people that are working on ETC behind the scenes and the cool stuff that's going on. So just so that everybody kind of knows about the developers and the teams that are working on ETC behind the scenes, we typically like to go through a little bit of, how you got into tech. From there, then how'd you get into blockchain, stuff like that. So what's kind of your backstory? How'd you get into working into technology, and have you always been interested, or did you kind of get hooked later on in life?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I'm best categorized as working on ETC, but I'm working on blockchain ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Definitely relevant to ETC, and hopefully
yes.
At some point even integrated and definitely compatible with ETC at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
but
yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I'd love to hear about how your rabbit hole down into this crazy world.
Yeah. So originally, my career hat is more like natural language processing and computational linguistics, but as time went on in my life, I kind of became more of a generalist and did lots of bigger software development projects. I've been interested in Bitcoin and the blockchain from not super early on, but from 2011, 2012, and was doing some hacking as well in the Bitcoins, around the Bitcoin client, but it was mainly just an interest in the technology and in the social impact it has. As I say, mainly from an ideological perspective. That's how I came to know about it. Even I was always interested in technologies which foster individual liberties and just give back sovereignty to people to do direct transactions without intermediaries.
Right.
And so I was mining Bitcoin as well, and in general I was just following the tech. And
Right.
when Vitalik presented the Ethereum paper in the Miami conference, I saw the video right away in January 2014. And then in February, Gavin Wood came down to London, and I was living in London at the time. And I met him. I saw the talk. That was, I believe, the first Ethereum talk after Vitalik's presentation, and I was blown away. I thought that this is really cool. Obviously, it cannot work, but
Yeah, that was
really
my
cool
thought
idea.
when I heard about it at first.
So,
yeah.
It cannot possibly work. And so I started talking with Gavin, and a few days later, I submitted my one-liner contribution to the C++ code, which turned out to be my first and last contribution to that code base. And and from there on, it's history, really. So I joined the Skype channel, started conversing with people, started contributing to the Go client, and got to know Stefan Tual, Jeffrey Wilkie, and the rest is history. So I worked quite a bit on various bits of the Go client over the first half year, dedicating quite a bit of my time. In fact, at the time I was working for the BBC on a project, and that spring I reduced my hours to basically 3 days a week so that I can work on Ethereum. And I definitely got lucky, because when the crowd sale happened, and the Ethereum Foundation was formed and finally had some funding, I was one of the first to be offered the job, and I've been working with the foundation ever since, and so after a while, of course, when Gavin was writing the yellow paper, I was doing some proofreading with him, and my skepticism just slowly disappeared, and I really understood that these people are geniuses and really thought about everything that I could have come up with, and completely got convinced that it's a workable thing, and that really made me very, very enthusiastic. And to be honest with you, my enthusiasm hasn't decreased one bit since then.
Yeah.
So I feel with Ethereum I really found the niche where my professional interests and skills and kind of align with my social prospect and the way I would like to see the world change. So it's a very,
so you
very
have a
good,
really
good position.
You have really deep knowledge then of Ethereum if you've been hacking on the clients, and then if you have a natural language background, that's pretty abstract, pretty complex stuff. So you must have a lot of talent that you bring to the table. Can you also describe how you became involved with Swarm, and what's your role there?
Yes. At the moment, I'm team lead for the Swarm project. So as your listeners might know, Swarm, alongside Whisper and the Ethereum blockchain itself, kind of formed what's funnily called the Holy Trinity of Ethereum, which. So the context of this is that from very early on, the founders of Ethereum recognized that the public blockchain is pretty much the final missing piece of the puzzle to
Web3.
bring about the old dream of decentralized internet. Because we have all these wonderful peer-to-peer technologies which have been in development for like some 20, 30 years even, but what's really missing is incentivization, which make these technologies. I'm thinking about like messaging or file storage or for content distribution, which make these peer-to-peer systems self-sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Now,
it was always on the agenda of the foundation
Mm-hmm.
to develop what became called Web3.
Mm-hmm.
So the return to the original ideal of completely decentralized internet. And so the original narrative was that if Ethereum blockchain, if the public blockchain is the world computer's CPU, then Swarm is the world computer's hard disk. And
yeah.
And so Swarm was always part of the Ethereum Foundation's project. And
now,
sorry,
just to backtrack, I was hoping for anybody listening out there that might not be as familiar, if you could tell whoever's listening that is not as familiar a little bit about Web3, just kind of maybe a general overview about what it is and its relevance to Web 1 versus Web 2, and how Web3 differs from those.
These are obviously not necessarily established categories. It's more like a half joke. So Web3 is the code name of the totally decentralized internet. What are we talking about? In the context of Swarm, especially, like Web 1 is the time when you had your own server, you uploaded your sites via FTP, and you had to deal with all kinds of scalability issues. If you had a blog post which suddenly became popular, you had to bear the cost of serving your customers. And if you were lucky to write something that piqued a lot of interest, then you actually a lot of times got unlucky because your server crashed.
Mm-hmm.
That was your reward.
Right.
So, but at that time you had more or less full control of your content. You basically owned your content. And the Web 2 times is when a lot of companies came and offered solutions for like scalable solutions to host websites, and that's when interactive real-time interactive web applications became popular. And this is still the time that we're living right now. It's Web 2, when you can get very good services and scalable solutions very cheap or even free. However, it comes with what my colleague Noidani termed as the Faustian bargain, that you really relinquish a lot of control over your content, and these big companies who own your data and basically monitor your usage and use user profiling and
nothing's for free.
Censorship and
yep.
And after all, have a lot of influence on what's up in the internet. And this is the situation which Web3 is set out to change and go back to the roots and basically completely decentralize.
Just to make it a little bit more clear, maybe not that it's not clear, but can you give our audience a good example of it doesn't have to be something even close to being possible yet, but an example of a good, really cool Web3 application that you would love if you could have one Web3 application in your pocket.
Well,
what
Bitcoin.
would it be?
Bitcoin
and
is
how would it function?
Right? No.
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about
maybe,
the most obvious example of Facebook, right? I mean, to have status updates, publish status updates, and let your friends see your status and comment on it, and having a platform where people can share things. Do we really need a company behind this? This is the basic question that if if you realize what technology is currently able to do, you realize that it's not really necessarily needed for most of these tasks. Can run on completely decentralized and base layer infrastructure.
Yeah, Victor, can I make a comment? Tell me if you think this is correct. So I agree that these terms are loosely defined. So my understanding was that Tim O'Reilly popularized the term Web 2.0, and like you said, one attribute was the fact that you have strong interactivity, like for example with YouTube, right, where people don't just receive content, they post content, they could send messages and dialogue. So that was Web 2 as interactivity, and then Web 3, what was missing was the trustlessness, which is the blockchain property that's not duplicated by the web, and so the idea then is to make a trustless web through the technologies you're talking about. But yeah, okay, good.
So let's focus on this a little bit. So
okay.
So interactivity and all these beautiful things like, and not so beautiful things like JavaScript, but it's very useful.
Ajax.
This should obviously be saved over to the era of Web3, because they prove to be very useful and very important in automating and things and give a very good user experience on the web, and made possible like really interactive web applications. However, just concentrating on the context of Swarm for a minute, what's really apparent here is that you mentioned trustlessness. Obviously, like for payments and a lot of other direct interactions at the moment, you need a middleman. You need a trusted third party, and that would be that is very useful to disintermediate, because as trusted third parties are some sort of centralized institutions, they constitute a single point of failure in many ways. So if MasterCard is shut down, then or even just like simple cases like the very fact that most of the websites of the current Web 2 are running on actual servers, and servers are in the hands of hosting companies, and
major point of attack.
For whatever reasons, either the authorities or the technological devils can knock on their door and easily wreak havoc and create big problems, because it's relatively easy to meddle with the system, so that single point is compromised.
I was reading
talking about
Gavin, when he describes Web 3, he calls it the post Edward Snowden web. So I thought that was interesting. So the internet originally wasn't really developed. Security wasn't a primary consideration, right? It was for academics. And so the web, the internet, and later the web they've slowly added security piece by piece. Whereas the Web 3 is kind of a vision of what if let's try to make the internet work in a completely hostile environment where you don't trust anybody, and even the computers on the network that contribute content, even the nodes aren't necessarily trusted. A completely hostile environment. So to me, that just seemed like the inevitable logical conclusion of making a secure internet.
So we talk about a few different things, and for the listeners, maybe we should just sum up that we talked about security, like sovereignty over your data, and we talked about censorship and also whether
and I can definitely see how
whether technical problems can influence the operation of your site. And just to summarize, so the common theme here is obviously some sort of centralized component. So the moment you have ways to distribute and your data to host your website in a decentralized way, to message people without having like a central server that your messages go through, a lot of these problems can be mitigated.
Yeah.
So you
and
need
that's what brings.
Go ahead.
Sorry?
And that's what brings me to my next question about now that the audience knows a little bit about Web3 and decentralization and these not single points of failure, if you could maybe tell them a little bit more about Swarm and what sets Swarm apart from some of the other solutions out there, and what excites you about Swarm, and just fill them in a little bit about that.
So just to zoom into the last topic, maybe let's summarize what's common to all the peer-to-peer solutions of content distribution and document storage systems. The ones that are emerging right now, the decentralized ones, have a common goal, and usually it's also a feature that they manage to achieve, that can achieve censorship resistance, because if content is distributed in a redundant fashion across a decentralized network of nodes, then it's very difficult to knock on anyone's door to get that content off. And this is an important feature for the freedom of speech and in general, like the credo that information wants to be free. Secondly, they have a very strong fault tolerance because of the redundancy and replication of content across nodes. They are fault tolerant, and ideally they can achieve zero downtime properties for like hosting websites. So these are the common features that kind of unite all the projects in the space. Let's name the beasts. So the project that's closest to my heart after Swarm is IPFS. We're on very good terms with IPFS developers, the Protocol Labs guys, and we've always been trying to collaborate and kind of compare notes, so to say, with them. And there are other solutions like storage, like Saya.
And
okay.
And what sets them apart?
Yes. So, well, I'd like to hear about what sets Swarm apart more specifically.
So for a minute, if we just concentrate on the actual document storage and content delivery part of Swarm, because later on we probably touch on a bit broader aspects of what Swarm brings, but primarily according to the original narrative, it's basically the data storage and content delivery layer. So in that respect, the main feature that sets Swarm apart is that, and this is the reason why I usually refrain from saying that Swarm is a file sharing system or file sharing system, because there's a genuine sense in which Swarm can be considered a cloud service. There's a genuine sense in which you can upload content to Swarm. So it's not unlike the original paradigm started with Napsters and Nutellas, where you had files on your hard disk, and you basically opened up access to those files, and this is how file sharing, peer-to-peer storage started. As opposed to that model, Swarm is you open up part of your hard disk, but it's not that you open up access to files that you store. Rather, how Swarm to decide what content will be stored on your hard drive. I will tell you a little bit more about this later.
I think I understand what you're saying.
But the main point is that you can upload, you can genuinely upload stuff to Swarm without even having a hard disk. So it's like a cloud service where the cloud can just receive your data and host your website, etc., without you necessarily even having to have hard disk space yourself.
So now, unlike Napster, you're not just sharing files, you could also contribute files that other people store for you. That Napster didn't have that ability. So
correct.
Yeah, one thing.
Okay. It all comes back to Napster. It always comes back to Napster. It's so crazy. No, go ahead.
I don't. Victor, have you ever seen or heard of Van Jacobson? His talk?
Doesn't ring a bell, no?
So I was blown away. He gave a Google talk. He's apparently the networking expert, works at Xerox PARC, and he was describing the history of networking and how it's evolved, and and how it went. First it was telephone network, and then TCP/IP connections, and he was saying, okay, today so the TCP was basically like a better telephone. It was more resilient, et cetera, et cetera. But today we don't really care about connections. We only care about content. And the way that we address content on the web, right? You have to, like, let's say I want to see the New York Times, I have to type the location of their web server, but we don't care about the location. We only care about content. And he was talking about making a content addressable web, which you would agree that Swarm is content addressable. So I thought that was a brilliant idea.
Thank you for bringing that up. It is exactly the next topic I was going to say. It's still more or less a unified solution used across the various decentralized hosting solutions. So what is this about? So content addressing is based on the idea that the routing or the way certain content is retrieved is based on an address, and that address is deterministically derived from the content of what you want to see. How it's done is not so important, but it's basically a hash, some sort of hash function, like a one direction function, which is similar to all kinds of fingerprints that can create a unique identifier from an arbitrarily sized data blob. Now, why is this interesting? Content addressing has a very immediate consequence, which is called integrity protection. So, in today's web, you often hear that it has been hacked. It means that someone managed to hack into a server and substitute different content from what's supposed to be there. Now, with content addressing, this is impossible, because the address or this fingerprint that's created from a content is completely changed, even if you modify one bit of the original content. And therefore, if you look up an address, and at least the routing or the service layer that serves you that content is not compromised, then the content itself that you see, you can be 100% sure that it's exactly the content that the owner or originator or creator of that content wants you to see. So from the lowest level up, integrity protection is there, and therefore traditional ways of hacking a website is just not even definable.
Yeah,
once
I heard that, and it made so much sense, I wondered how anybody could ever design any other type of system rather than,
yeah, right.
it's just so
yeah,
perfect.
right.
Yeah, I mean, like with just as an example, if I wanted to download a software for my Windows laptop, so because of the magic of hashes, if Microsoft server is busy, I could, and let's say there's a server in Iran or Russia or China that happens to have a copy, because of hashes, I can have 100% confidence from, you know, even a location that maybe I'm is questionable or I'm uncomfortable with. I can have 100% confidence that the file is exactly what I would get from Microsoft in that example.
Correct. And of course, this is even more relevant. I mean, it's one thing that you might read fake news or something on a hacked site, but obviously the most important thing is that like all kinds of payments or input of private and sensitive data, or actually even downloading a software that you run on your own computer. If that software can be just changed to another one without you noticing, that's super dangerous. And these kind of attacks are not possible with content addressing.
That's right. Now, would you say that Swarm takes a lot of the good ideas from BitTorrent and kind of just expands on it, right?
I often say that Swarm is basically, for people who are not so tech savvy, I usually say that think of Swarm as BitTorrent on steroids, because after it's based on the same idea of distributing content.
That's a good one. I'm going to tell everybody that's what Swarm is. I've always had trouble explaining it, so I'm going to steal that. I'm saying Bitcoin on steroids, BitTorrent on steroids from now on.
I mean, of course, let's be fair here. So we use a lot of the basic ideas what BitTorrent uses, but we also incorporated a lot of novel, innovative solutions that make Swarm potentially usable for low latency, serving low latency real-time web applications, which at the moment BitTorrent is not able to do because of the delay in the initial download of assets, and more fundamentally or systemically, the problem is BitTorrent is lacking the incentive layer, which makes it sustainable. So BitTorrent is currently running on vanity tokens, right? I mean, some geeks consider it their duty to maintain like
so Christian, I don't
collections.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you have. I'm sure you have more questions on this topic, as do I. But there's something in our pre-show notes that I want to touch upon before we run out of time.
Okay.
I saw some notes about volunteerism and crypto anarchy. Interest like that. I'd love to know that I mean, I'm very into the non-aggression principle as well, but I'd love to hear more about your life as a digital nomad, as you said it, and some of your thoughts on free market volunteerism and in this advent of crypto anarchy, or however you want to say it.
I mean, I don't want to pretend that I'm too savvy about this topic, but it's just clear that my ideological leanings are somewhere around there. So
yeah,
I'm a true believer that the blockchain can finally bring about the emancipation of a lot of areas of interaction between people, in the sense that the free interaction between individuals or basically two sides of a value transaction are not impeded by any intermediaries putting restrictions on it, either via their business interest or or basically just some sort of cultural legacy of a regulation. Where
Yeah.
So what you're saying,
well,
you're saying that it's political for you, not just interesting technology. I think is one of the points.
Yeah, I mean,
Carlos.
from very early on, that was definitely one of my main motivators, that my professional interest and skill set aligned so well with the way I would like to see the world change or improve.
Well,
by
wouldn't
promoting freedom and liberty.
Victor, wouldn't you say that you were kind of talking about the centralization of data earlier on these servers, which is a honeypot for attacks?
Correct.
This kind of the way that money has been controlled for all these years kind of left a honeypot of money in the center that gets spent on a whole bunch of military buildup. At least it's my opinion that once all this money realized again, and there isn't this honeypot of money, a lot of this military spending in all these, powerful countries around the world will have to decrease. What do you think? Is that kind of your?
I'm definitely I definitely resonate with that thought, or call it dream, wish.
Yeah, dream.
I really hope that technology helps driving the world towards that situation where the the political systems financed by the kind of more central bank system, and
yeah
is gonna let's be humble here, like at least lose its power a little bit.
So can I ask a question, Victor? All right. So I'm just like with blockchains, I'm 100% confident that anybody that investigates the technology of swarm and related technologies will believe that this is there's so many good ideas here, and so many better ways to make a file distribution system, or as you said, a cloud service. Now, people that when the light bulb goes on and they start to research it, they hear about swarm, they hear about IPFS, and like you mentioned, and there's even other ones now. So can you talk a little bit more? Can you guide people on the differences and how they all interact?
So I already touched upon one important difference, which is the genuine sense in which you can upload stuff to Swarm, and therefore you don't necessarily need your hard disk, and that's why I don't like to use the word file sharing system. It's actually a genuine cloud service in a way, decentralized cloud service. Another important difference between IPFS and I think Siacoin and others as well, that is aspects of incentivization. So how Filecoin is set out to work, as far as I know the latest, it's based on the idea that file storage works a bit like mining. So nodes compete in proving that when they're challenged whether they have a certain file, they prove that they have it, and therefore they get some reward, and as a result that there's some sort of positive incentivization that the files are preserved. However, we found that this is just one side of the coin, no pun intended. So
just to clarify, so for people that don't know, Filecoin is the IPFS, Interplanetary File System solution. Is that correct for incentivization?
Correct. The Filecoin is exactly, which is now built on Ethereum.
Okay.
And so we believe that this might be overall a good scheme for incentivizing nodes to store at all. However, this is insufficient protection to preserve unpopular content. Why is that so? So imagine that I upload my family album or my birth certificate to Swarm, and I really want it to be available, but maybe in 10 years' time, and in the next 10 years I don't even look at it. What am I going to do? It's unlikely that with positive incentivization I can guarantee that those files are available. So what we do instead in Swarm is we introduced a kind of insurance type of scheme whereby nodes who either explicitly or implicitly become responsible for storing a piece of content. Here, piece of content technically is just a chunk of data because every file is chunked into little pieces, but it's kind of irrelevant. So anyway, nodes that end up responsible for storing content can be directly held liable, which means that there's a prospective punitive measure inflicted on them if they are found to be guilty of losing a file. And that we believe is a much stronger incentive to have a healthy network where the files that you want to insure and want to preserve are actually guaranteed to survive the fact that they are unpopular. Because popular content can easily be incentivized by the reward that you give for serving the content. So you don't even necessarily need insurance for them. But unpopular content, or let's say rarely accessed content, is more susceptible to loss.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, it's the difference is the incentivization. So you think you have better incentivization system, and so that would be one reason why somebody might choose Swarm over IPFS. Okay.
Correct. So one is direct upload. Second is incentivization, especially in terms of punitive measures for unpopular content and preservation of files, and thirdly, a lot of other goodies. So
yeah,
those are the two big ones. Okay. Yes. Is there any other competition besides IPFS that's on your radar?
I mean, let's be fair. Storage and SIA are already existing and production level solutions, and in some ways they can be called alternative solutions and competition. However, the scope of their solution, I believe, is a lot narrower than what we set out to Swarm to achieve.
Right. You have more ambitious goals.
Which might end up being the demise of the Swarm project, but at the moment I'm very optimistic because it all looks good. Okay. Actually, Swarm is very interesting.
We're rooting for you.
Swarm showed signs of very good design from very early on. It's kind of a lot of solutions to problems kind of fell out of the design without even us researching and thinking about them. So it's kind of very interesting.
Can I ask you another question?
So
go ahead, Carla. You want to ask something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, before we run out of time, I wanted to ask a couple of key questions, kind of maybe to give the listeners a little bit more guys where you guys are at, where you're going. So
the status.
Maybe you could tell everybody about kind of what's on the short-term roadmap, and I think they have an idea of the long-term roadmap, but what's on the short-term roadmap, and are there any dApps already available on Swarm, or is all this just
there's a few basic dApps like this distributed photo album. There's markdown viewers and some very basic dApps already exist. But in fact, the Mist wallet is also hosted on Swarm. So pretty much everything that you can do in JavaScript and kind of static or client side solutions are able to run on Swarm right now. So
if you could snap your fingers, right away, you could make a that isn't around yet. Which dApp would it be? What's your dream dApp to have for Swarm that you'd like to just get it done right away?
Decentralized YouTube.
Oh yeah,
that would be sick.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Good answer.
Yeah, nobody would ever doubt Web3 if you could do that.
Yeah, if you
we're actually working with a company called LivePeer that set out to implement a decentralized media server and and streaming solution.
That would be wild.
And we also support streaming via Swarm, and we have a collaboration with that team to
That's
bring
unreal.
about a
Wow.
proper adaptive multi-bit rate.
Okay, let's get people excited.
For like one-to-many broadcast as well.
Okay.
Let's get people excited. Till decentralized YouTube launches in the same popularity way that YouTube launched, didn't launch, but the way YouTube caught on fire in like 2007, 2008. How long till the decentralized YouTube does that?
Well, it's really difficult to
just get people excited.
Because I can only say that the base layer infrastructure, that the technological part that makes it possible, will probably be production ready in spring 2018. And from then on, I mean, from my perspective, it's just the skin and the UI that will make YouTube possible. However, what you're asking about mass adoption requires a lot of guesswork in terms of marketing and mass adoption, hinging on other factors than just technology. And I'm not the best person to answer these questions, so I don't know what because
I think the way that
a lot on the perception of this space in general. So just think of Bitcoin, that was long associated with, like, dark markets of druggies and things, and this didn't actually help the adoption too much. And I'm not saying that it's not the case anymore with Ethereum. However, such factors can be of importance in the mass adoption.
Yeah, adoption is hard to predict. Yeah. Can I ask you a question about the Dexagram? Dexagram.
Victor said 2019.
Okay.
Got it.
Good. Okay. So
Victor,
2019. Got it.
Dexagram is an active developer in Ethereum Classic, and he wanted me to ask you about, so he's focused on Ethereum Classic, and then some people are focused on Ethereum, and he had a plan to try to make a common a swarm port or system that could work across different Ethereum ports.
I'm fully supportive of the idea. I mean, in fact, we would like to make Swarm right away compatible with other blockchain solutions. At the moment, it's not the case, and we're really working tightly integrated with Ethereum. But the smart contracts that the incentive layer and the domain resolution is using, which are the two aspects in which Swarm is related to the blockchain at all. These two aspects are based on the capacity for a blockchain to be able to implement smart contracts, basically. I'm not even saying that it needs the full power of Turing complete system, but in effect, I would not even dream of starting to port Swarm to Bitcoin, for example. But as long as there's some reasonable complexity of or expressive power of the smart contract language, let's say if it's Turing complete, then definitely there's compatibility.
And there's no there's no technical reason why you couldn't have Swarm work across several blockchain systems with sufficient, like you said, scripting language sophistication. Do you think that's going to happen?
In fact, in a few years' time, there's going to be standard solutions for inter-blockchain communication. Like we already have Polkadot and Cosmo and all kinds of solutions in the making, which will make it possible to have cross-blockchain solutions. And I think once this time comes, it's going to be less and less relevant what blockchain you use.
Okay.
And
so good. There's no technical reason.
Swarm itself can, even the one single global swarm could actually just use several blockchains, and what people do their peer-to-peer dealings in would be left to their discretion.
All right. So people should definitely look into Swarm then for the future of cloud services and file services.
But let's be fair. Let's be fair. The same is probably true of IPFS and some other solutions. So let's be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really.
Do you have any predictions on how the future is going to play out in the next
good.
couple of years? Like 5 years from now, what do you think IPFS is? Where are they going to be? So.
That's really I'm not the best person to tell.
I think they got a lot of funding.
They just raised a lot of funding, so
yeah.
they're probably in a good position to churn ahead with their awesome tech. I cheer them.
Yeah, they have a little bit. They just have a little bit of runway. $200 million. That's crazy.
So compared to that, the Swarm project is definitely not so well funded, but I won't be complaining because the Ethereum Foundation is also, strongly supporting us and has a relatively big pot. So
wait, funding. If you want funding, why don't ICO, why don't you do a Swarm ICO, start a company and become the chief there, super well funded? What about that idea?
Listen, the Ethereum Foundation from the start put it on their banner to develop Swarm. It would be rather disingenuous for the foundation to suddenly relinquish this project, and it was also disingenuous to build a company on that and raise extra funds for something that's already been promised. And which
brings me to my next question that I know you want me to ask really bad. What's your favorite ICO coming up? Don't do it. So for everyone listening out there, this was before the show. Victor's like, I just don't want to talk about ICOs. Just don't ask me. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about it. I want to pretend it doesn't exist. Which I think everybody's had it up to their necks with ICOs.
There's so many other people who are better
above our heads
to talk about this tonight.
Yeah, but so we'll avoid that. But I think now I know where kind of the origins of your background, how you got into Ethereum and blockchain, your political leanings as far as non-aggression principle and free market volunteerism, as well as Swarm, where its origins, where it's at now, where it's going to be. I'm definitely rooting for decentralized YouTube. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So I think I'm really happy we get a chance to have you on the show. Before you go, maybe you could tell everybody a little bit about your digital nomad life. How many are you in a bunch of countries all the time doing all this stuff, or have you been kind of sit tight?
I've been traveling in the past 2 years, basically constantly. Some of these travels were motivated by my duty to evangelize and give talks, but some of the other time I just seek out places. I mean, we people who work in the digital space and do, especially programmers, in a very privileged position. I'm very grateful to be able to work anywhere where there's internet and a laptop, which includes any kind of environment, and I just like to enjoy that luck and seek out places which I love.
Okay.
And so I travel around and work from various places.
Well, all of us in the community are happy. I was going to say all of us in the community are happy you enjoy it because you're killing it. You guys are doing big stuff, man.
You said now everybody always could use more funding, but is there anything else that you need if people want to support Swarm, besides funding, of course?
Yes, thanks for asking. I mean, helping hands are always needed. So if you are a developer, dear listener, please come to the Gitter chat, the public Swarm channel, or come to our engine room, which is called the Orange Lounge, and please feel free to contribute or just watch a little and see how work is done in our quarters. I'm very happy to receive help from developers. And of course, if you're not a developer, just spread the word and enjoy using this this software.
Technology, yeah. Yep. Tell people about your ambitions to replace the internet with a new improved, or replace the web with Web 3.
Correct.
Very ambitious vision. Yeah. I think we've covered everything. Carlo, anything else you have?
No, I just wanted to thank Viktor for coming on, and Christian. Thank everybody out there for listening to today's show, and look forward to maybe doing this again sometime, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm always available for chat. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, guys.
You again.
For anybody that, thank you guys for listening to today's show. Till next time, take care.
Hey, bye-bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
If you are passionate about anything related to Ethereum Classic and you have something to say, we'd love to discuss that